What is going on, everybody? Happy opening day to all of you baseball fans. Got to start with that Julio Rodriguez intro. It's an exciting year for the Seattle Mariners. Cal Raleigh just extended this past week. We'll save that for a separate podcast. Dylan is a big Nationals fan. They've got a lot to be excited for this coming year with Dylan Cruz, James Wood, and crew. Dylan, I guess what are your emotions right now with opening day? I mean, for me, it's like just irrational excitement, just through the charts or off the charts.
Optimism, baby. Nobody's in a slump right now. Everybody's 0-0. Just happy that we don't have Joey Meneses and Jesse Winker hitting 3 and 4 for the Nats this season. That was brutal last year. So this team's supposed to take the next step here into being competitive. CJ Abrams, Dylan Cruz, James Wood, pick up Nate Lau this offseason, Mackenzie Gore as our opening day starter. So very excited. Happy for you, Connor, and all the Mariner fans in here. I'd say they'd probably be my AL team. So super nice to see them lock up Cal Raleigh. Hopefully Logan Gilbert's next.
Yeah, no matter what happened this offseason, no matter how the last season ended, they signed the big dumper to a 6-year extension, 2 days before opening day. So everyone's forgot about that. Now everyone's juiced for opening day, but we'll get into more baseball talk later on in this episode. There's a lot to cover in this episode. Thank you to all you Coug fans for tuning in. Make sure to go check out CougFan.com, subscribe to their premium membership. They have a exclusive story that is breaking right now. WSU running back coach Robbie Rouse has resigned after back on March 16th. He was pulled over, arrested for a DUI. Here is the headline for the article. Robbie Rouse to WSU players, staff, and fans. I'm deeply sorry and embarrassed for my lapse in judgment. I left Coach Rogers no choice. I let all of you down. First-year WSU assistant says. Dylan, what more information do you have from this exclusive article?
Yeah, I mean, not good. Especially, he was 4 times over the legal limit. Driving from Spokane to Pullman. I mean, it's just a blessing that he's not hurt. Nobody else is hurt. But I mean, you get that news in where he resigned abruptly and you're going, okay, what's going on here? Is there something deeper? Then a few accounts kind of posted that there might be some legality trouble. Coug Center sent in a records request. And then within a couple hours, Greg Woods of the Spokesman Review, Coug Center, Coug fan, all had the same thing. DUI also is his 3rd, I believe, in the last 10 years. And we're not here to tear a man down or anything. So I just thought his statement yesterday through Coug fan and us, was pretty classy, and it seemed extremely heartfelt. And it seems like, we're just hoping that he can get the help he needs, and then can hopefully get back into football some way, somehow. But I guess I'll share a little bit of what he penned. You had about the first half there. And he said, hey, I respect his decision. I respect him as a person and a coach. For now, I must take the opportunity to work on myself. I am no longer the person I want to be. I am no longer the person that I am capable of being. I must fix that starting right now. I will use this time away from football to get the help I need and desire. I will become a better person because of this. I will not let this define my career or who I am, but the onus is on me. I put myself in this situation, and I will work every day for the rest of my life to repair what I've done. To everyone in the Cougar Nation, including the coaches, the athletic department, the young men, the alumni, and the university, I'm sorry. I let all of you down. The short time I got to spend here showed me why this is a special place. I will not be commenting on this until such time that me and my attorney believe it is appropriate. I appreciate the compassion that many of you have shown me already, and I sincerely hope that our paths can cross again. Like I said, Connor, reading that definitely felt like a man that obviously knows he's in the wrong. And it felt like a real explanation, and it's tough. So
yeah, the I mean, the shame and embarrassment that you could feel after something like that. Like, everyone's been through tough times in their life, and he's a human. Everyone's human. You know, as you also mentioned, this is his third DUI in the past 10 years. So more than anything, just hope that he can get on the right path and get back to, sobriety and finding the next step in his career, because he's only 34. He has the rest of his life in front of him. And
Well,
the big positive is that, yeah, he didn't hurt anyone. Everything is fine in that sense. And now it's just, let's take the next step.
I had a buddy, kind of tell me the other night, hey, I've got a buddy that's, a trooper with the WSP. And, he said he told him that that's the highest he's ever arrested for a DUI was 0.301. And that person was unconscious at a red light. So,
and he was 0.34. Is that the
yeah. And going into, yeah, I mean,
and just to add some context while you're looking at it, he was arrested on March 16th. Now, just yesterday, March 26th, is when he officially resigned and when it became public. And Jimmy Rogers has already hired the next running back coach. So if you have another thing to add on Robbie, we can, but then we'll get into the new hire for the running backs coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows what 4 times the legal limit will do to you. It's almost like you're a zombie. So we won't keep going into those details, but obviously the change happened abruptly. And Connor, give us the details on our new running backs coach who's headed here from Wyoming, who literally was just hired to take that coaching position just a few months ago.
Yeah, so clearly Jimmy had a guy in mind when this started to happen. They moved quickly, and so they've actually hired Donnell Kirkwood, who is the new running back coach actually at Wyoming. It's unfortunate that the head coach of Wyoming called the move disappointing and unfortunate timing. It's unfortunate how it kind of happens to where the bigger programs kind of pull from the smaller programs, and so when this happened, they moved quickly. And the tie here is that Donnell was actually the running back coach at North Dakota State University for 2 years prior to moving to Wyoming. Back in 2023, he was there while Danny Freund was the offensive coordinator, who is now, of course, the offensive coordinator at Washington State. So there's that direct tie there. This probably happened. Danny was like, hey, Jimmy, I got a guy. Highly recommend him. He was, so Donnell was actually a running back at Minnesota from 2010 through 2014. And so we'll just have to see, kind of what he brings to the table as we start to dig into who Donnell is and where he's come from.
Obviously the big kicker in this, Robbie Rouse from San Diego, he was going to be that SoCal recruiter that's going to get us into Southern California, San Diego, during his time at Cal Poly. That was his recruiting hotbed. Obviously a couple Cal Poly transfers have already made their way up this winter. 2 guys that were recruited by Rouse during his time there. So that's a kicker because there's not a lot of West Coast affiliations on this staff. So Coach Rogers and the rest of their staff are going to have to dig deep to get in the trenches of the state of California, because the recruiting in this state is just uber important.
And as you described in this article from Coug Fan, again, it notes that Rouse has deep ties in San Diego, while Kirkwood's background is all in the Midwest, kind of where the rest of the South Dakota State University coaching staff has their ties. So it'll be heavy recruiting in the Midwest. We'll see if we get any other connections to down south or out in California again. But it's interesting timing, of course, because there's only a few spring practices left. Let me see here. There's going to be another practice that's actually going to be happening up in Spokane. It will be a closed practice coming up soon. So, but likely, Donnell is going to be put into the mix quickly. We'll see if the messaging is somewhat the same. And of course, the spring game is going to be on April 12th. Dylan and I will be heading up to Pullman, Washington for the Washington State Quarterback Classic Golf Tournament. We're going to be standing on the tee box with the Cougar Collective for that golf tournament on Friday, hoping to get some great content with some of the legends from WSU. And then that Saturday will be the spring game officially ending, the spring session for football, hoping to get an interview with Jimmy Rogers at some point. Still a lot to be excited for, but make sure to stay tuned in. Go check out cougarfan.com, subscribe for all of the updates on the football side. Now pivoting to basketball, Dylan, what do we have from the men's basketball standpoint?
No pun intended, Connor. Pivoting. Washington State men's basketball, as they get set for their matchup with Georgetown this weekend in the Crown tournament, the brand new tournament created by Fox Sports, essentially just trying to take out the NIT with coverage. So we'll see how this goes. I think the Final Four players will receive NIL. So that's going to take 2 wins for the Cougs to get to that point. Now we have had a few portal entries ourselves. 2 guards, our starting point guard, Nate Calmise, entered the transfer portal. Honestly, I truly believe that is going to be an addition by subtraction move for the Cougs going forward. If they can retain Marcus Wilson, who's more of a true point guard, I mean, the turnover issues with Nate Calmise, I mean, it just got head scratching and hair pulling at points. Isaiah Watts, through a few sources, he was out about a month and a half ago. So this is a guy that has been trying to figure out what type of package, what type of bag he can get elsewhere. I've heard a few SEC teams are in on him, but this is a guy that's probably going to maybe go up a division and really be a bench type player. His analytics on Bart Torvik, not great for a starter. Defensively, turns the ball over. He's a 35% 3-point shooter. And I'm not here knocking Isaiah, but those guys are a dime a dozen in college basketball. You can find plenty of guys to come in here and shoot 35% from deep. So we'll see how they handle that. You did bring up that article, Dane Erikstrup, who was had a bit of an injury at the end of the season. Coach Riley expects Dane to be back for the tourney against Georgetown. So that's going to be good for Dane to kind of finish his career at WSU in a bit of a better spot than where he last was at. I do believe he fouled out in his past games. So that's
Dylan,
the big thing.
You have an interview coming up with him?
Yeah, we've got an interview today with Dane Erikstrup. Unfortunately, weren't able to get that live on the live show today, but we'll have that up and running tomorrow on cougarfan.com. So keep your eyes peeled. We'll have about a 10 to 20 minute interview with Dane. Hey, if you guys have any questions or concerns with Dane, send them here, reply to us on Twitter, and we'll go from there. But the biggest thing right now is Lawan Watts. Obviously the transfer portal has not entered it yet. CougFan had a great article earlier this week that there is a lucrative offer made to Cougars standout forward from Fresno. This is a guy that you've got to be able to retain as a foundational piece going forward. He does it all. The analytics love him. Yeah, he turned the ball over quite a bit this season, but I mean, there was plenty of positions where he had to take the onus in terms of the point guard role with whether Nate Calmise was in foul trouble, turning the ball over too much. Cedric Howard being out also lifted his role much higher. So this is a guy that if you can keep here for 2 years, because let's be honest, in college sports, 2 years is the new 4 years going forward in the NIL landscape that we currently have. So just kind of getting into that article on Watts. CougFan talked with Tim of the Cougar Collective, Tim Brandel, and this is what Brandel had to say. First off, Lawan, after the West Coast Conference tournament loss, he said, "I'm a Coug for sure. I think I'm always going to be with Coach Riley for the rest of my career." The buzz around Pullman is that he means it. Obviously loyalty goes a long way. You saw Cedric Howard, Dane Erikstrup, Ethan Price, and Lawan all take the short hour drive down from Cheney to Pullman this past year. So, obviously keeping him is going to be huge. And Tim Brandel, co-chair of the Cougar Collective, tells CougFan.com today that a concerted effort on the Cougar NIL front has resulted in a lucrative package being presented to Watts. I feel good about where we're at with Lawan, he added. Now, here's the biggest thing. Over the past couple of years, we've seen players from teams all over the country say, hey, they're returning. And then all of a sudden, the bags and the offers keep coming in. And I'm not going to parlay it to what we saw with John Mateer. Obviously, Oklahoma came in near the end of our season and kind of derailed that locker room and derailed some things inside that football locker room. Doesn't sound like we're gonna lose them, so we've just got to keep some optimism. And honestly, with things like this, it's going to take time, because these kids, they deserve to see what their worth is. And some folks may not like that, but it's just the new world that we live in.
That's just the new state of college athletics. We'll see who sticks. And then talking women's basketball, they actually beat Utah Valley on Monday, 57-54, to advance to the Super 16 of the women's national the women's NIT. And their next game is coming today at 5:00 Pacific against North Dakota State University. And what do you have from women's basketball at WSU? And any rumors on who's staying, who's going? NIL. I'm curious. Obviously there's a difference between the sports, but I'm curious how much it's going to affect women's basketball.
There's a current match campaign going on for the women's side of things. I believe that's around $20,000 or $30,000. So, hopefully that match can get to 30. We have 60 grand total for the women's side of things in NIL. But the women's team is also dealing, with uncertainty in the transfer portal. They're still playing games. They're at Fargo tonight to play North Dakota State, whereas Coach Rogers and a lot of the South Dakota State folks would say that team up north, just like we say that team out west. Diana Mendez is in the transfer portal. She played in that initial game and is now gone. So Cami Etheridge is dealing with it as well. So is David Riley. So it's just a world that we live in right now in terms of NIL. And, a lot of these kids are gonna test the waters and see what they can get at their current university as well as elsewhere. I mean, who wouldn't?
Absolutely. And then getting into baseball, we got a couple interviews that we had. So Dylan and I were actually at spring training this last week. We went down to Guardians camp on a certain day. We got an interview with first baseman for the Guardians, Kyle Manzardo, who of course played at Washington State University. Next day, we went to San Francisco Giants camp. Giants closer Ryan Walker. If you don't know this name, get to know it. He has one of the most unique deliveries in all of baseball. It's a crossfire delivery. He basically strides from the pitcher's mound towards third base, comes across his body, 97 with 15 to 20 inches of horizontal break on a sinker, has a sweeper as well. We'll play clips from those interviews in just a second. But first, Washington State University baseball. They are still working their way up to the 500 mark. They are currently 9-15. They are 4-2 their last 6. So again, looking to work their way back to 500 if they can. Their next 3 games come at Nevada starting tomorrow and then finishing out through the weekend. They then have another game at Gonzaga next Tuesday. So we'll see if they can work back to 500. So getting into the interviews that we had with these two WSU, there's 3 current guys in Major League Baseball that are WSU grads. One is Ian Hamilton, who is over on the East Coast with the Yankees. He's a reliever. His spring training was down in Florida. We couldn't get to him. But starting with Ryan Walker, super unique story, 31st round draft pick out of Washington State. He was a guy that worked his way up through the system. And he was actually, he grew up in Arlington, Washington, very close to Seattle. He grew up a Mariner fan, grew up watching Ichiro, Beltre, Felix. And so here's some of the clips. First off, we're going to start with Walker talking about the opportunity that he got heading into his college time at WSU. And I actually played high school baseball with Ian Hamilton, who was the closer at the time at WSU. He moved to a starting role. Ryan Walker came in, had some opportunity to close out some games. So I actually played high school baseball with Ian Hamilton.
Nice.
And so when you first were going to Washington State, I believe he was the closer at the time.
Yeah.
He ended up setting the WSU saves record for the university. And then his senior year, he transitioned to a starting role. So how did that kind of overlap with your time there, and to where, since he moved to the starting rotation, that opened up the ability for you to close some games out?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, it provided some opportunity, you know, and took advantage of it, you know, and that's just kind of how baseball is, you know. The tough thing about the minor leagues and going through the system, you never wish anyone goes down, you never wish anything happens, but like when it does, that provides opportunity for you, and you just got to take advantage of it, you know. So that's kind of how it was. Is, you know, Ian got moved to that role, and so I try to take advantage of my next role coming up.
Any takeaways from that first clip?
I mean, it wasn't a very good Coug team at the time. Coach Lease was obviously the head coach there. But it's kind of crazy looking back on it that this program over a 6-year stretch was able to put, 3 guys into the Major League Baseball, starting off with Ian Hamilton, Ryan Walker, drafted in the 31st round. And folks, there's only 20 rounds in the Major League Baseball draft now. That was changed after COVID. So what he's doing is just an incredible story. And I mean, what he was able to do last season, he had 21 holds. He was 10-4 and still finished with 10 saves. So he had 10 holds, 10 wins, and 10 saves. That's got to be something that maybe only a handful of players have done in their career. Kyle Manzardo, obviously a little bit different. We'll get into his backstory and just kind of how he's dealt with the initial 3-4 years of his career, getting drafted by the Rays, traded by the Rays to the Guardians, inserted into the playoff roster last year. So Ian Hamilton, the biggest thing with him has just been staying healthy over the duration of his career. That slam bone slider, the ham bone is just absolutely filthy. So we'll see where he stacks up in the pen with Aaron Boone this season. He, had some high leverage spots last year before he got hurt. So, we'll see. They lost Clay Holmes. They bring in Devin Williams, so he's going to be the closer there. But, Ryan, just speaking with him for the 15 to 20 minutes that we had, I mean, just what a down to earth, calm, cool, and collected, even keel guy. He was just a fantastic interview.
Out of a closer, he's just like completely level, like not super high energy, just like super relaxed, like a super chill guy. And then he has to, like other guys, you just have to flip it on when you get up onto the mound. But here's him talking about his time in college again. And he started some games. He closed out some games. Here's his preference.
Washington State, obviously a special place. During your time there, you came out of the bullpen, a couple different options. At the time, what did you like doing more?
Definitely coming out of the bullpen. Yeah, it's more fun to go out for an inning and just letting it all eat, not having to worry about having to last multiple innings. And the adrenaline rush is there for me in that moment. Starting was just not the same. Didn't really get that same adrenaline rush. It was hard to really dig into like my inner pitcher, I guess you could say. So I kind of struggled in that role. So I think the relieving part is definitely more my gig.
Absolutely. We should just stick to relieving. And then here's him talking about his time being drafted in the 31st round. Again, now there's only 20 rounds in the draft. And then the rest of your career, walk us through that, and you end up getting drafted in the 31st round of the draft. Now the draft is only 20 rounds, right?
Yeah.
So what was that experience getting your name called and so late?
Yeah, it was awesome. I expected not to get drafted. I had such a bad junior year, and then senior year wasn't great either. So, I mean, I was hoping for something. Teams were talking to me, so I guess I expected a little bit but I definitely didn't expect the Giants. They were the team I talked to the least. And they weren't even talking to me during the draft. So once I got picked up, I was really excited. My dad was there. I almost didn't know what to do or say, so it was cool. And being my
And it's always interesting to hear stories because, being drafted late in the draft, the signing bonuses aren't there. It's like you got to decide, okay, do I pursue a career in whatever I majored in going to school, or do I try to grind it out in the minor leagues for a few years? It took him close to 5 years in the minor leagues to get to a level to where he debuted.
Well, and great thing you bring up. It's like, do I go into my career? Do I take this shot as a 31st round draft pick? A lot of those guys flame out after a year because you got to remember. I mean, they're drafting another 20 to 30 people next year, signing another 10 to 15 guys to non-major league deals. And the one thing he brought up when we asked, hey, was this like your only offer coming out of school? He said Oregon had talked to him. He said Santa Clara gave him a full ride, but they didn't have a criminal justice program at Santa Clara. So that was a hard no for him. So shout out the criminal justice program at Washington State for helping reel in Ryan Walker.
I didn't get to this during the interview. I was going to ask him if he was a big CSI guy or like, what's his ideal job if he wasn't in baseball, being a detective or something. But yeah, it's one of those things to where, do you grind it out and maybe put yourself back a few years in your career and overall, or do you grind it out and go for it? And now it's paid off for him. He's a closer of a professional baseball team.
Well, the only thing that grinds my gears a bit is, Walker, he still has 4 years of arbitration with the Giants. And at his age, you want to get paid, right? Obviously that arbitration number is going to continue to rise if he continues to play this well, and has a signature role as the closing role in San Francisco. But the biggest thing is we want to see our Cougs get paid, especially a Major League Baseball contract, because seeing what our Lotus Chapman makes on a 1-year deal over the past 3 years, $12 to $15 million. I mean, right now, Ryan Walker, arguably, in my opinion, he's a top 3 closer. You put him along with Devin Williams and Emmanuel Clase, and those are your 3 guys that are, I think, the best. Yeah, Munoz too. And then add in that kick change. Shout out the Mariners. We've got to get plenty of Mariner content in here.
No, but kind of speaking to the arbitration thing, that's why, Cal Raleigh was just locked down. And like, if Ryan were to be offered a deal, it might be after this next season because he has 4 years of arbitration. Once he has 3 years left, buy out the remaining years of arbitration at a set amount, maybe buy out 1 to 2 years of free agency. It gives Ryan Walker or Cal Raleigh the security of that big number. Their health isn't guaranteed moving forward, but then also gives the Giants something to plan on moving forward, a set amount, instead of having to go to arbitration every year and go back and forth on a number. So yeah, hopefully Ryan Walker gets the bag. We'll see if Ian Hamilton can stay healthy. And then we'll get into Kyle Manzardo here in just a second. A couple more clips from Ryan Walker. This one, as I mentioned earlier, he grew up a Seattle Mariners fan. And actually, so he debuted in 23, later on in 24, he made his return to Seattle and he diced up the Mariners, 5 strikeouts in 2 innings. And here's him on that experience. You grew up in Arlington, Washington, Arlington High School. You went to Washington State University. Walk us through your journey throughout high school, growing up in that area. What teams did you watch? What players did you watch? Yeah, Arlington's a cool place. It's small. So like you kind of hanging out in the woods most of the time, bonfire, stuff like that, so I loved it. Big Mariners fan, we'd go to Mariners games all the time. My dad worked for one of the minority owners. He took care of one of his properties. So we got tickets a lot. And so growing up watch Beltray and Ichiro and Felix. So those were kind of the guys I enjoyed watching as I was growing up. And that was kind of my only team. A little bit of the Cubs. My dad was in Chicago for a while as a kid. So, I enjoyed watching the Cubs, but just mainly stuck to the Mariners. So you debuted in 23. Later on in 2024, you actually made your first appearance at Seattle. What was it like to go back to T-Mobile Park to play against the Mariners? 5 strikeouts in your 2 innings of work at that game. What was it like to do that in front of your family and friends from that area? Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, another game I was pretty nervous for because I knew I had tons of people coming.
How many?
Hundreds. Wow. Okay.
There was, I had a whole section blocked off up top somewhere. And then just seeing the people I didn't know who were showing up. showing up. Yeah, it was pretty incredible. Definitely one of the better experiences, going from sitting in the stands watching and then actually being on the other side of things was pretty awesome. So I would say that's one of the highlights of my career so far.
Like, how surreal is that, watching a team growing up and then you go from being in the stands to now pitching on the mound against that team with hundreds of people that family and friends that are up in that area. Same thing happened with Trevor May. He grew up in Kelso, Washington, which is just 30 minutes north of where I am. He was a Seattle fan, ended up pitching, of course, for years throughout the big leagues. So it's a super cool story. And it's always really cool to see local guys that have the success and are able to do it on a big scale.
Yeah, the other thing too, his fiance or his girlfriend now, wife, grew up in the San Francisco area. So, he mentioned how nice it was to have her and her family and a little bit of a spot, like a safe space in the new city that you're in with your new major league club. So it kind of helped ease things in his transition into Major League Baseball. So, it's been so fun to watch. And I think the last clip that we have is him going through his long repertoire of pitch scripts and pitches, which is really only two that he has. It's his fastball slider combo, but pretty interesting aspect of how he likes to grip the baseball.
Take us through your arsenal and kind of your grips with the baseball.
Oh, my huge arsenal of two pitches. It's very standard. I mean, I have a very standard two-seam grip. So in college, I was actually here, so I was a no-seam.
Yeah.
So I didn't like feeling laces. I liked feeling leather. And I essentially just took it here to here. So it just made it a little bit more consistent. I still don't like to feel the laces, so I try and stay in between. I don't like to be on them. Got a lot more consistency that way. And then the slider, again, in college, I was more like on the side here. Again, it became a little inconsistent over time, so eventually moved it to right here, a little bit more on the horseshoe.
That's one I see often.
Yeah, and again, keeping that tilt and keeping what we call the seat belt, essentially.
Yeah, the seat belt.
And keeping it within this range makes for what I got.
Yeah, so it is a two-pitch arsenal, but it's, a standard two-seam. And then the new slider that he has is exactly how Matt Brash grips his slider. And I've seen that as a very common, like, for a sweeper. When you look at his arsenal, obviously he has a sweeper. It breaks 15 to 20 inches glove side. His sinker, due to the arm slot and everything else, breaks 15 to 20 inches arm side at 97 miles an hour. So you have to account for 30 plus inches in horizontal break on top of him throwing 97 with a sweeper that's like low to mid 80s. I mean, there's a reason why hitting a baseball is the hardest thing in sports. It's nearly impossible, especially with a guy like this.
One thing we are going to actively work on over the next 2 years and 2 off seasons is trying to get Ryan Walker or Ian Hamilton to throw to us live. Connor and I get in the box.
We'll sign the waivers. We'll
sign the waivers. Kind of a king of JUCO content, and we're going to show everybody out here that two Bush League and Sunday leaguers can't touch a Major League Baseball arm, and neither can any of you in the stands. Okay, it's the hardest thing to do in professional sports. I do not want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. The hardest thing to do is hit a baseball.
Until you see it in person, like watching it on the TV, it's like, oh, it was clearly in that box that was outlined. Why didn't they hit the ball? But then you go to a game and you see how fast it looks in person, like how fast 90 is compared to 97, 100. And then you start to realize how much it's breaking. And it's like, oh, it looks like it's coming right at me. And then it breaks completely down into the zone at 97. So, yeah, it's a completely different experience seeing it in person. But then transitioning to Kyle Manzardo, of course, he's the first baseman for the Guardians. Carlos Santana was just brought in this offseason, so they might share some duties at first base DH. But Manzardo was traded from the Rays. He was drafted by the Rays out of Wazoo, traded to the Guardians. And so here is him talking about, there's two parts to this, but this is the first part on his trade.
Kind of work your ranks up through the Rays organization.
Yeah.
Were you traded when you were in Durham?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Take us through that process, just first couple seasons with the Rays, and then, what is the whole process in terms of when you find out how quickly you're moving your stuff, like the whole shindig?
Yeah, so I played my first professional season at Bowling Green and Montgomery, Alabama. Loved both of those places. I killed it. Had a great year, and then went to Durham the following year. And that was kind of the first time I had really struggled, I would say. And then wound up getting hurt, so I was back in Florida at the complex rehabbing. The trade deadline was kind of approaching. The Rays were really good at the time at the big league level. They needed starting pitchers, so I wasn't sure if I would get traded. But I got home from rehab one day, laid down to take a nap, and got a call. And getting a call from this specific person, I knew that I kind of had a feeling that I had just been traded.
So you woke up and had to call him back?
No, I hadn't even fallen asleep. I was just like laying down after the day was done, like getting ready to watch some TV or take a nap or something. And then phone starts ringing. I'm like, oh man, all right, let's see where I'm going.
Is that the first time you got a call from that person?
No. Just given the timing, trade deadline, I think the trade deadline was the next day. So just given the timing of it all.
In conversations with guys that are in the minor leagues and in the major leagues, like anytime you get a call from the general manager, it's the little pucker factor, because it's like, okay, something's happening here, and you might be moving cities. Sometimes it might be that they're moving you from the rotation to the bullpen role to try you out there. But Manzardo got the call, especially around the deadline, and he knew what was happening.
Yeah, and his last tune-up game, 1-for-1 with a solo home run. He did miss a couple days shortly after we had left spring training last week with some shoulder tightness. So good to see that he's ready to go. Expectation for him is probably hitting third or fourth in that Guardians lineup for sure against right-handed pitching. The biggest thing for him going forward is, they bring in Carlos Santana. Obviously paid that guy anywhere, I think $12 million to come in for 1 year. They trade Josh Naylor. So there was a little bit of musical chairs there, but it does open up at bats at the designated hitter spot. Or, hey, if Carlos can't, at 37, 38 years old, Santana's obviously not going to play every day in the field. So the hope is that Kyle can hit lefties a bit better this year. Through the minor league system and at Wazoo, didn't have any issues hitting left-handed pitching. It's a little different when you're facing the Chris Sales of the worlds up at the Major League Baseball level. So he's a sleeper I have in fantasy this year. He's on a couple of my fantasy teams. So looking forward to seeing how Kyle can break through this season.
At the very least, it's a good thing that Garrett Crochet is not in his division anymore. So that should help a little bit. And then here's the final clip from Manzardo. It's talking about how basically the Rays traded them because they had a need, but there's a team that wanted him in the Guardians.
And I guess the other end of that is, hey, you have another organization that scouted you, looked at you, and said, hey, this is a guy that we want for the future. So what how do you take that to, where hey, we have an organization that wants me?
Yeah, I mean it was. I think it was a positive trade for both teams. They really needed starting pitching. They had some injuries earlier in the year, and then I was also hurt at the time. So I got to come here, walked into a better situation, I would say, for myself personally. And then, they got what they needed.
So an opportunity, a door opens for Manzardo, and excited to watch him this year. Make sure to lock in to Kyle Manzardo, Ryan Walker, Ian Hamilton this season. Again, thank you to those two for sitting down with us. Yeah.
We got a couple more things. This is going to be our quick betting corner with it being opening day. I want to give you folks a couple locks for the season. Okay. First up, Kodai Senga, starting pitcher for the New York Mets. His over-under on total strikeouts this year is 166. Only started one game last year due to injury concerns, but in 2023, he brought in his ghost fork changeup. Hitters were unable to pick that up. He essentially sits out all of last season, plays a little bit in the postseason. So I don't see hitters really gaining traction on picking up that pitch. He had 202 Ks in 163 innings in 2023. So if he can throw 140, 150 innings this year, I think he blows well past that 166 mark. Love that. I'm going to give you a guy on the Nationals, James Wood. his over-under home runs this season, 17.5. He had 9 last year in 79 games. The nice thing about that is you can kind of just take his stats, multiply them by 2 because he essentially played a half season. He had 5 homers in spring training, a guy that's going to hit 3, the main piece in that Juan Soto deal. I love that. I love the Boston Red Sox over 86.5 wins, what they did this offseason. Garrett Crochet, Alex Bregman. It seems like they've kind of figured it out with Devers. He's going to be DH full-time, no trade requests there. So I really do like that. And then another sleeper team in the AL West, not the Mariners. I like this. I like the Oakland Athletics. Sorry, not the Oakland Athletics. The
Sacramento.
A's or the Athletics.
Yeah.
In their cozy ballpark, as our great commissioner Rob Manfred said. I like them with 71 wins this year. I think they're over under 70.5. I think that's a pretty good play. They've got a lot of pop in their lineup with Brent Rooker. Lawrence Butler is bursting onto the scene. Great young player. They actually spent more money than the Mariners too this offseason. Again, that's the John Fisher A's that spent more money than the Mariners, unfortunately. So those are some plays that I like. Connor, do you have anything on your end?
Yeah, I mean, adding to that, they're playing in a minor league ballpark there in Sacramento. Brent Rooker had 40 bombs this last year. His over-under is 33.5. Also, Lawrence Butler's over-under is 23.5. Yeah, definitely take the over on the wins as well. Julio Rodriguez is over-under 25.5, which I do like. I think
For
he's going to have
homers?
a breakout year. Yeah.
Wow.
If he has a strong start to the year, the past couple of years, or at least last year, he was injured during spring training. So he had a slow start, and that led into a slow April, which he's had every year of his career. He ended his spring training with 3 home runs, 4 home runs over the last, 6 days, and including a grand slam. He looks hot. So definitely take that. Also, Mariners over under is 84.5. I think that they will win the division. That's a little biased there, but I think they'll win 90 plus games if they could stay healthy as a rotation. They do have depth at rotation if there are injuries, but the offense can't be as bad as it was last year. It was on a historical pace bad. So a lot to be excited for, a lot to be positive about. I do think the Red Sox will be a really good team this year also.
Hey, Dan Wilson, Edgar Martinez, that offense picked up with Dan Wilson
Kevin Seitzer,
under the helm last year. And Connor, and we'll go into your side of things. What are your plans this weekend via couch GM mode with the Mariners?
Yeah, so I'm headed up to Seattle opening day today. I'm going to be hitting the road here in about an hour. And so I'll be doing a vlog. I'm going to do behind the scenes of just today. And then I'm going to put this vlog together tonight, and hoping to ask some guys on the sideline today. I'm going to try to get some Mariners guys, some A's guys, but ask them what opening day means to them, why it's such a big deal. And then on the Mariners side, I'm going to ask some guys about the Cal Raleigh extension and what it means to this clubhouse and this team, because it shows that the organization is starting to lock up. This is the first of many, hopefully, of the guys that are foundational pieces, cornerstones in their franchise. Cal Raleigh is one of the reasons why this pitching staff has been able to be so elite. He was a Platinum Glove winner last year, 34 home runs, 100 RBIs. He is still slept on and underrated across the league. Like, people still are preferring Adley Rutschman when this guy is here in Seattle just putting up numbers. So
30
a lot to be
bombs
excited
last
for.
season.
34 and 100.
Yeah, I think his over-under is 30.5 home runs. So obviously Vegas, they don't set those lines like idiots. They obviously have some information going forward. So going to be really interesting. Like we said, it's one of the best times of the year, opening day. I mean, think baseball, everybody gets set up for this first week, and then the casual fan, we lose them until maybe the All-Star game and the playoffs. Fine. Hey, come on back whenever you want. Baseball is going to be here, and we're glad it is back. So very excited to see Zach Wheeler deal against my Nationals today. I'm ready to get hurt again, man.
Yeah. Happy opening day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to check out CougFan.com. Subscribe to their premium membership for all things Cougar Athletics, and we'll see you in the next one.